We are back. This is Around the Country in 30 Races, a Seabrook Day production. Now, in this long period of time we've had since we last spoke to you with Jack Butel, we've unfortunately lost our favourite race mechanic, Cammy. Um, so we're having to make do, but I'm sure we can. My guest today is no other than Rich Hoit, the spearhead behind the Hard Compound page, which I'm sure you've seen. How you doing, Rich?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too bad, thank you, Will. Busy, but
Yeah.
that's the best way to
The
be.
busiest man I think I've ever met. Well, without meeting. Busiest man I've ever spoke to. Um, so I want to just jump straight in, really. Your page is, in my eyes, tremendously successful. You've interviewed some of the gods of motorsport in quite a short amount of time. Uh, why? But why did you originally want to start this page?
Well, firstly, thank you for the kind words. That's very nice of you. And I've been very lucky to speak to some amazing people. I'm not going to name drop just yet.
No, do it.
But it was probably about 2 years ago, so summer 2019. And we were just going to move house, really. And I found an old box of like race reports that I'd done when I was 8 or 9 years old. So I'm going to age myself here. That was like the late 80s. um, and I showed them to my wife, saying, "Oh God, this is a bit sad, isn't it?" And she just said, "Oh no, that's really cool. You should maybe do something in the digital world, maybe because you've always loved motorsport, so you may as well do that." And I sort of gave it a bit of thought. And yeah, just a couple of weeks before the British Touring Car Championship season ended in 2019, I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this just to get some motorsport fans engaged and share my motorsport nerdness with anyone who wants to listen, really. And so I set it up just on that basis, just as a bit of a hobby. And for some reason, it just kind of went quite well. Yeah, and weirdly, there's a BTCC fan out in Panama with a hard compound mug at the moment, and that's the only person that I know from outside the UK.
I never heard of them before they went in the World Cup. To be fair, so you're good there. How have you reached out to there?
I've no idea. Well, thing is, because I set it up, I thought, well, the BTCC is nice and accessible. That's a way to get into there. I sort of love F1. It's a global audience, so I thought, right, let's just post about that. And if it, and then I posted a lot about the IndyCar because I watched my first Indy 500 when I was 7, and I've been hooked on it ever since. And I think I tagged a couple of the old IndyCar drivers, and this guy obviously followed those IndyCar drivers and saw it on Twitter and thought, all right then, I'll give this page a follow.
I mean, for
And then he said, how much is shipping for a mug to Panama? I was like, I've no idea.
a lot.
I've never sent. It's probably more than the value of the mug, to be honest, mate. But he was happy with it, so so that's
I tell you
fine.
what, his happy face with that mug could make a cover photo. Actually, that's just my PR
Yeah,
head coming on there.
yeah.
But
I think he needs to, get down to the Panama Canal with a big tanker behind him or something with the mug,
I think he needs to reach
and,
out. Actually, I think that'd
and we'll
be
get it on CNN.
CNN.
We'll get it global.
CNN, not Fox. No, we don't need opinions other than that of motorsporting. We don't need to go anywhere else.
Exactly
No,
that.
no. Because as we see from our social medias, it's a bit of a minefield. So if we just
Yes,
blinkers on
having
motorsport, oh yes, look at that new car fan. Oh, that's lovely, isn't it? Yeah, let's never
yeah,
mind the crap.
everyone's talking about politics and whatnot. It's like, no, what's happening at the mom? What's happening at Knockhill?
Through everything that we've had going on in the last month or so in motorsport, obviously, it goes without saying that this podcast will be dedicated to every marshal, past, present, future, and everyone who just works to make this happen. But as a result of the unfortunate incidents which happened at Brands, which I really I don't think anyone wants to go into anymore, other than just
No,
what we
no, sure.
saw at Alton Park. Thought we'd go into that weekend thinking, all right, everyone's going to race. There's either livelihoods or just everything at stake for these people. But there was going to be an inkling for them to just maybe just not try and find, especially at autumn, which is undulating. It's close barriers. But what we saw that day was it. I mean, you've been pioneering quite a lot for calling for either just changes. Um,
Yeah.
what would you where if you given the chance to stand in your soapbox to people who would make things happen, what would you be saying?
Well, and I think just to go back, I think you're absolutely right to dedicate this to all the marshals and all the people that sort of try and keep us safe. And obviously, we know what happened with the one guy at Brands. So huge thanks to all the marshals. The Orange Army are absolutely amazing. With regards to the safety side of things, I've been saying this for a while, and this isn't just aimed at the minis or the BTCC. It's aimed at motorsport in general. Now, obviously, it goes right back to Ayrton Senna. That was the seismic weekend. Him and Roland Ratzenberger. We almost lost Rubens Barrichello, and this is when they started slowing things down, which is fine. But they've also introduced runoff areas rather than barriers. And I've always thought that if you have a suspension failure or a puncture or something goes wrong on the car and you're doing 150, say, another 50 yards of concrete or tarmac isn't going to make any difference. You're still going to hit that barrier hard.
Mm.
And obviously, and there needs to be barriers because otherwise we'll be racing in fields and sliding on for oblivion, for eternity. So, but I've always thought there's a track laid out for a reason, and if you go off it, there's got to be a penalty. Now, the issue was with gravel traps before that cars can roll and drivers can get injured. But we saw at Alton Park, there were like minis, bouncing off barriers,
Ping pong.
bouncing back into the track and stuff. But I mean, and the cars were, looked a right mess. But structurally, I think there was only one had one of the damaged. I call them scaffold tubes, on the roll cage that was damaged. But, the cars bounced, all the bodywork came off, but the driver got up and walked away. And it's the same in F1 with the halo and IndyCar with the aero screen. Cars are much safer. We don't get many injuries now. And I'm now thinking, is it time now to just go back to the good old-fashioned gravel trap? Because grass will slow you down, but if it's wet, it's going to speed you up.
We've seen with grass last season. We had Rory Butcher at Silverstone, where he's slid and he's hit the barrier, and that's what's caused him to roll.
Yeah.
So the grass didn't slow him down because it was towards. The calendar was late anyway. So what I'm saying is the grass was going to be a bit more slick if it was midsummer. But then we had Bobby Thompson at Croft. Now he was a perfect example of what you're saying here. For whatever reason, it came off. I can't quite remember where he.
I think he was leaned on. I think it might have been by Aidan Moffat. Sorry, Aidan, if it wasn't you. I do apologise.
Yeah.
And nothing against Aidan.
Robin's racing.
But I think he was just eased off to the right-hand side onto the grass, and as he turned to try to head back towards the track, I think the car dug in and rolled over.
And it's a perfect example of what can happen.
Yeah.
Now, do you believe let's just keep these two case studies quickly, if there are gravel traps, would you think there's a better chance that he wouldn't have rolled, and then also Rory wouldn't have slid at full speed into the barrier?
I think Rory, because he wasn't off at an angle, he was off at less than 45 degrees to the track. He was off at like 20 degrees, and so the car wasn't likely to dig in on the trajectory that it was on. That's easy for me to say, isn't it? Smashed it. But I'm just thinking he would, if you have like different depths of gravel, like different, so if it's quite shallow on the edge of the circuit, so there's a bit of a penalty. If he'd have just gone into gradually deeper gravel, the car may have sort of leaned over to one side or gone up on its nose a little bit, but I'm not sure it would have rolled, and it certainly wouldn't have got as far as the barrier, and it was the barrier that caused the incident and the damage and the roll at Silverstone. And with Bobby, I think it's the same thing. The car may have rolled because I think Bobby went in sideways into like a cabbage patch type thing where he really barrel rolled and the car smashed a bit. But when you're on grass, the car kind of bounces. as it rolls. Whereas the gravel, it just it just
It just
digs
yeah.
in and it slows down and the energy dissipates and you might have gone over once and walked away and maybe carried on for the rest of the season and maybe got a drive for this year. Whereas bouncing across the grass, wrecking the car, knackering his budget, and it's put him out of the series. And I just think that surely the idea of leaving the track is supposed to be penal, but also if it's very, very like a very severe off, then it should be survivable, um, and it should be, you know, the whole point of going off track is to slow the car down. So let's slow the cars
Well,
down.
we can think Max Verstappen against Silverstone. You know, he's
Mm.
gone into a gravel trap. Now, obviously, F1 cars are a hell of a lot faster, and they're very different cars to the touring cars. And he
Mm.
hit that gravel fast, and he hit that barrier
Yeah.
hard, and there was obviously a lot of damage. We've seen the fan footage of how quick they came across. But you know, grass or a runoff, we're looking at a lot worse.
Well, I mean, I think because everyone was saying that he was put into the barrier or whatever G it was and stuff. I mean, the thing is, I'm not saying that the G and the impact doesn't matter because it does, and that's a hell of a hit he took. And I mean, I was at Silverstone, I was at Stowe, and when we saw the replay on the screen when Max went in, the whole place went quiet.
Mm.
And I'm not having this whole thing that the Hamilton fans were cheering. Yeah, they cheered for about 10 seconds until they saw the replay, and
Yeah.
then it went very quiet. And then there was an even bigger cheer when Max got out. But I mean, that was a high speed corner. But they reckon that the gravel track probably scrubbed about 40 miles an hour off, which doesn't sound a lot when you're doing 180, but that is a big difference. That's a huge difference. And if we were looking at another circuit, say if that had happened going into the first corner at Monaco, it would have been even worse
Yeah.
because you go off and wallop, there's a wall there. But yet, if it was, say, going down to La Source at Eau Rouge at Spa, the hairpin, if you're going thumping down that hill and you get touched and you're out of control and you've got 50, 60 metres of tarmac outside the confines of the circuit, then you're not going to lose that 40 miles an hour. You're just going to go straight on, skid across. You might lose 5 or 10 miles an hour, and you're going to hit the barrier in the same way, but faster. So, that's why drivers want to stay on the track because the track's the fastest bit to go. Don't put more bits of track outside the track, because when you go off, you're just going to keep going at that speed. So maybe that's me and my old school brain, but I think if you go off, you shouldn't say, "Oh well, he's put a tyre outside the line. Let's knock a second and a half off."
Track limit abuse.
Yeah,
You know, we didn't see that at Knockhill. Strangely, mind you, there's more curb than track at Knockhill. Let's face it, so
yes,
it's pretty impossible to abuse it. Um,
but if you just take one incident at Knockhill, forgive me, I think it was in the second race when Ash Sutton was behind Colin Turkington.
yeah,
Ash was chasing him down, absolutely brilliant,
fantastic.
and Colin defendingly, and Colin doing a just as good a defensive job. But Colin took too much. Was it either too much of the left curb or too much of the right curb at the chicane? He basically went. He was pressured into a mistake. He took the left curb. That pitched him off into the gravel, and just in that 2 seconds, it was too much curb penalty because it pitched him off the track into gravel, which slowed him down, but it didn't hurt him or the car. And if there'd just been a huge tarmac runoff there, he'd have just bounced over the curbs and kept his boot in it and probably won the race.
Yeah,
And so in that 2 seconds, it was basically, this is why you don't hit the curbs too hard. And this is why there's gravel. Because there's a penalty, but there's no danger. Or there's not as much danger. But in my mind, that proved my point, but people might think I'm talking nonsense.
no, I think you're absolutely right. Personally, like I say, opinions are like bumholes in this well anything, but especially motorsport. And we're as good at educators or as educated as anyone else really. I'm wondering, we're sat here now as fans,
Yeah.
but what I'm wondering if the powers that be are having the same thoughts at this point, and if they're actually going to make a change. But
Well, maybe. I mean, it's my first my first name drop. The first interview we did was with Rob Gravitt, the 1990 champion, who was one of my sort of BTCC heroes growing up, and his son Bradley. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Rob Gravitt should be running motorsport because he everything he says is absolutely spot on, and he is of the same opinion or a similar opinion to me. If you know the whole skill of being a racing driver is one, going fast, and two, going fast and sensible within the confines of a circuit. That's the circuit's there to test you and to test your skill as a driver. Now we know that there's going to be 30 cars piling into one corner. Stuff's going to happen, and cars are going to go wide, and it's often no fault of the driver who's gone wide that's happened. But there's an old saying that happens, and that seems to have gone out the window these days. So, oh well, so and so's got to be blamed because so and so went off track. No, sometimes stuff just happens, and I'm just thinking that if you do something wrong, hit a curb, or you run out of talent, which I absolutely would run out of talent very quickly,
guilty.
there should be a penalty for it. There's nothing wrong with penalising errors, and I just think that going off onto a load of tarmac and being able to keep your foot in it and rejoin one place behind where you left isn't really a penalty for basically not doing what you're supposed to do and stay on the track. But again, there's mitigating circumstances with every incident, isn't there? But
There's a lot of finger pointing.
yeah, yeah. But Rob has just said the same thing as me, and it was, if you go off track, okay, we don't want to see cars rolling and smashing into barriers that are right next to the circuit. But if there's a bit of gravel that you have to, try and negotiate your way through for 2 or 3 seconds, and you lose 7 or 8 places, well, then so
Then
be
so be
it.
it. It's better than being smashed up.
It's better for the team and the driver that the car doesn't roll over and or like skid, doesn't like skid across any grass or tarmac into a barrier. It's good for the fans because they still get their race carrying on, and you've got someone charging through from behind. And it helps the marshals who don't have to do any work
Yeah.
repairing, just like repairing barriers and stuff. And we haven't got to sit behind safety cars for lap on lap on lap and all this kind of stuff. Just think, if you go off track, slow the car down, bit of a penalty,
You're back.
and get on with it.
Yeah. I mean, moving slightly on, in terms of driving standard. Now, again, yes, disclaimer. Me and Rich are not racing drivers. We are.
Absolutely
I'm
not.
actually sat in a camping chair right now in my makeshift studio. And I will defend drivers on social media who are getting fingers pointed at by every Tom, Dick, and Harry who thinks that they can race quicker because they drive at 90 down the M25.
Yeah.
So we've seen. I've seen comments that people believe that maybe the simulators are having a bit to blame in the drop of driving standards.
Yeah.
One sort of elaborated the fact that because there's no danger element in when they're doing the E series or whatever it's called, that it's transferring a bit. I'm not sure. I think once you get in a hot, humid car, actually feeling every bump at 150 plus miles an hour, you're not going to be going, oh, it's okay because I can hit pause and go back again.
Yes.
But also, some people point at things that the tracks that they're probably doing more laps on the computer, that maybe there's inaccuracies in the bumps, in the twitches, in certain
Yeah.
areas. Where do you think there's any element of truth to this personally, or do you think that esports and stuff like that are actually quite beneficial?
I think it's a bit of negative and a bit of positive. It can help drivers keep keep their eye in and keep the reflexes in and get to know circuits that they haven't driven in the past, which is fine. I mean, again, quick name drop. Spoke to J.R. Hildebrand, the Indy 500, like the IndyCar driver, recently, and he was going up Pikes Peak, the hill climb up in central USA, and he said that, and he got invited to do it, and he'd never been before, so he got on a sim and he basically learned the basics. But we've all played computer games, and I'm not saying esports are computer games because I know they're not. They're far, 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 far more advanced than that. But as you say, you're never going to be able to replicate the feel of a car through a machine. I mean, you can probably do a blinking good job of it and get it 85% right, but it's always going to be different. And I'm just thinking if certainly the young drivers who, as you say, spend more time on the sim than racing the car, just because of the way time works and travel and like running a car and whatnot. Um, I think there might be something just in the back of the mind, thinking, well, I've done this on the sim. I know how I can do this, in the flesh, and then when it comes to it, they think, oh, crikey, maybe I can't do that. And that's not how I did it on the sim. And yeah, maybe there's that little switch in the brain that just turns off a little bit of the danger. Especially I think with like tin tops, whether it be like minis or Porsches or Genettas or touring cars or whatever it might be, because you've got a roll cage surrounding you. You might take a bit more risk. You probably feel a bit safer maybe in the car than you would in, say, a kart or a single seater. Um, and yeah, I just think, while the Sims are beneficial, and obviously it's a huge industry as well, I just think that maybe for a split second you might forget that you're in a car, and these are real people around you, and that if you crash in a sim, you're going to bash and spin around, and your car's going to flip over on the screen, and you wobble around in your seat. But when you do it at Alton Park, as we saw, and other circuits, when you hit a barrier, you bounce, you roll, you flip, the car breaks into bits fly off. You know, other cars come piling in, and they can get hurt as well. So um, it's a double edged sword. I think it's one of those. It depends on if you're a sim racer or not. I think if you're a sim racer, you probably think they're brilliant, and if you're not, and if you're a bit older like me, you probably aren't so much of a fan of them because you've not used them as much. But um, yeah, maybe because there's not that penalty on the digital world. You might lose your lap time, and but you're not gonna lose consciousness, should we say?
Yeah, I think we've chewed the fat on controversy and negative implications and everything. But I want to talk to you now. We're at the halfway point, and by the time this is rolled out, we still won't have been at Fruxton, so it's okay. We're relevant. Um,
Good.
we're halfway now. Ash Sutton in the lead. We all thought he would. Well, I thought he would, but
Yes,
it's
agreed.
unpredictable
Yeah,
because, as I've said before, him and that car go together like spag and bowl. Um,
absolutely.
I'm personally surprised that Tingram's sitting in second. I thought that car would take more developing. I thought it was built in mind for the hybrid era coming obviously next year, so it would just be a sit it out for this season, develop this car, and you'll be at the top for next season. So he's my biggest surprise at the moment. But where he, where, what are your thoughts on the season to date?
Um, I think we're absolutely right about Ash Sutton. As people keep saying, "Oh, how is he so fast?" when Moffat and Baldley are and
Yawn.
stuff, and snore.
Yeah.
One, it's because Ash Sutton is a bloody good driver,
Mm.
rapid as hell. And the other one is that he's still got the guys from BMR, who he was with at Subaru, running his side of the garage, and they know how to set a car up. So he's got a great team behind him, and he is one heck of a driver. Very, very, very quick. So yeah, no surprise to see him. I thought he was going to be in the top two or three, at least, and obviously he's just and he's leading things now. Agree with Tom Ingram. Obviously, Tom was superb driver as
Mm-hmm.
well. And obviously, Accelerate had two of those Hyundais last year with Chris and Senna. But to have two new cars in the team, I believe I'm not sure which two are the new cars. I know Chris Smiley's is last year's car.
Mm.
I'm not sure if Tom's is a new one or if it's the one that Senna Proctor had last year. But either way, it's still only the second year for the car, and for him to do what he's doing in it is a surprise. I thought he'd be top six. I thought he'd be knocking around sort of where, like, I don't know,
Josh Cook.
where sort of guys like Rory Butcher are this year. Again, in a new car. I thought it'd be a similar story for Tom, but he's proved me wrong, and he's proved a lot of people wrong. Um, I'm not going to write him off because
Never do in this, can you?
it's Tom Ingram, but I do think that he will not fade away. But I just think as we go to different circuits and as the cold weather comes in, it could play a factor with the new car.
Yeah.
My other surprise is, I guess, a negative one, and that's Colin Turkington.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were looking at West Surrey Racing, with Tom Oliphant and Stephen Jelly in there, to really, be up at the front end. Maybe those two being rear gunner to Colin.
It hasn't turned out that way at all.
And it hasn't. They just haven't seemed to. I mean, they got it tuned in at Snetterton on a scorching hot day, but the BMW seems to go well in warm, sunny weather, and we're in the wrong country for that, aren't we? So if you can be good in the wet as Ash Sutton is, then you're going to do all right in the BTCC, aren't you? But because obviously there's like Colin not lost it, but the championship got away from him at the finale at Brands last
Which
year,
was
and it was cold
down.
and wet, damp and drizzly and wet and nasty and British, and yeah, but I really thought they were going to. I mean, I again name drop spoke to Dick Bennett on the page, and he was very confident going into the season. And obviously, congratulations to them for getting the 100th win and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just been a surprise to see Colin struggling.
But we're halfway, I mean, the thing is,
Yes.
Collins never seems to do it at Brands. I remember it was the 2019 year where obviously poor Dan still probably has nightmares about that incident.
Well, the thing is, the Hard Compound was 4 days old that day. And I didn't know what to write on the Sunday night. I was like, how the hell do you do that?
Where do you start?
Because I was actually at Brands Hatch for that day. I was lucky enough, before I set the page up, I was lucky enough to win a competition with RCIB Insurance Racing, which obviously became MB Motorsport. And I was there on the hospitality thing on the main straight for the first couple of races, which was great. And had a chance to win a car by doing a Scale X tournament, which I'm still convinced was fixed. There was only one girl in the tournament, and she won, and I beat her twice. Anyway, I'm not bitter. I'm not.
We'll just move on.
Sean Hollenby, come on now, have a word. No, no, it's fine. But then we were just down. I don't know if you know the bit of Brands Hatch between the pit lane and the entrance to the back of the pits. There's like a little triangle bit where some of the fans get to go.
Yeah.
And we were there, just sort of overlooking. Overlook. I was going to call it Bottom Bend. That shows my age. Graham Hill Bend. And we were there watching the screen when Dan went off, and just the gasp when that happened. It was like, oh my god, because he'd finished every race, and it was just unbelievable. I mean, but as you say, like Colin wasn't having a good day. He got turned around by Matt Neal. And again, Matt's been on the page as an interview, and he.
One I am envious of, actually.
He maintains it was completely innocent, so yeah, we'll take his word for that. Matt, Matt knows better than I do.
To be honest with you, I don't really want to argue with Matt Neal. I wouldn't want to sit there and point a finger saying you was wrong, because I don't think I'd win.
No, when you're 6'7" and a black belt in judo or karate or whatever it is, we'll take his word for everything.
I'm still working on my first grade in Aikido, but I don't think that's going to quite cut the mustard if I piss him off. Right, we're going to get back on topic. Um,
Yes, sorry, BTCC. Yeah, we went even within BTCC. We went a bit wobbly. Yes, this season.
this season, where do you see it going? You see Ash Sutton taking the win?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I actually put up on social media. I said I'll be. I think he'll have it done by race one of the final weekend. I think he'll have it done. Nothing against Tom Ingram or anyone else chasing, but Ash has been there
Who's
before.
going to beat him?
When the weather turns in, he knows what he's doing. Don't think West Surrey Racing have quite got enough yet, but yeah, we could be proved wrong second half of the
Well,
year.
that's
But
some
someone I've been
predictions.
impressed by though, I think someone who is going to come through is Dan Rowbottom. Now I spoke to Dan. I actually knew what was happening at Team Dynamics
I remember you teased me.
back in November, just after I spoke to Matt Neal, and I spoke with and I've been in touch with Dan Rowbottom for a year or so when he's been out, and so I knew what was going on, and it was killing me. Um, I couldn't say anything,
Sitting
and
on that
then
one.
oh god, it was dreadful.
But
It
hang
was
on,
yeah,
no. Dan Rowbottom who? How dare he take Dan Carrish's seat? How dare he? That's just awful. Dan Carrish has
yeah.
done much
Oh, that
better
isn't
job.
going to work. What's he doing in there?
Oh,
Oh, the racing started. Um,
oh, hail to Robo. Oh,
the thing is, I latched onto Robo when he was in the Clio Cup because I bumped into him down at Thruxton. Because I thought there's a bloke in a racing suit. He must be one of the drivers, Sherlock Holmes here. And I just saw saw the garages coming out. I just had a quick chat with him, and he doesn't remember this, and why would he? But and I thought I'm gonna follow this guy, and I was obviously pleased he got the touring cars, and um, obviously everyone people were saying why did Team Dynamics get rid of Dan Camish? The Team Dynamics did not get rid of
no.
Dan Camish. Honda pulled out. There was a huge gap in the funding because the factory backing had gone, and given that Honda had approached Dan when he was in Porsches, Dan didn't bring that much in sponsorship because he was like Honda's guy, and that's why Matt Neal was, playing second fiddle to him and getting him into the position to win a championship. And then when Honda said nope, no more, there was a huge gap that needed filling financially, and Dan couldn't do it. And everyone said, "Oh, why have they got Dan Rowbottom in to replace Dan Camish?" No, Dan Rowbottom was replacing Matt Neal. It was Gordon Shedden that came in.
Yeah, people
Uh,
forget that Gordon Shedden is actually in this team, and that
yeah,
logically he's
and
going to be the
and he
number
brings
one guy.
backing because he's got business interests and he's heavily involved at Knock Hill. I believe he's marketing director or something at Knock Hill. So
Yeah.
he's got some, so he's got some, some backing and some presence there. But the thing with Dan Rowbottom was done obviously like Dan had, Dan spoke to Cataclean and they had agreed that they were going to not spend the money on the car and the sponsorship for the 2020 season with Sicily, which is where Jack came in, Jack Butel, and then and they said, right, we're going to give you the same amount of funding for next year. So he didn't lose any money in 2020, and he got the same for this year, and that's and and obviously Cataclean and Halfords, they're sort of intertwined with cars and that kind of thing. And it was just a good fit. But yeah, Dan has come in. I think Matt, even when he spoke to me on the live chat, he didn't tell me, but I think he'd made up his mind by then. Well, I'm sure he had. And he'd already spoken to Dan apparently in the middle of 2020. I think before the 2020 season started, said that he wanted Dan Rowbottom.
So that's the thing when we finally hear all these driver changes, team changes, all this sort of stuff, and everyone kind of goes, "Oh, this has been done. This has been done
Yeah,
6 months prior, six,
or
or
more.
more." Yeah, you know the
Yeah,
the thing is, motorsport to the fans, to us, is entertainment. But as soon as you run a business that's slapped on the side of a car, or as soon as you're running a car, or if you're driving a car, or even if you're working on a car, it's a business, and it's a business first. And if and
yeah.
the business needs money. Without money, there is no business.
Well, I mean, the amount of drivers that I've spoken to, and and like they've said, "Oh, you are racing on TV. You must have loads of money." It's like, well, no. No, they have to raise the money to get racing on
This
TV.
isn't Formula One. These guys are not sitting in Monaco. These guys,
Right?
if you listen to, Tin Top Tuesdays, like last one I listened to was Aidan Moffat on, and he's talking about
Yeah.
his business up in Scotland and stuff like that.
He's got his recycling business and waste management. Yeah.
Yeah,
Same as Rob Collard.
yeah,
Rob Collard's made his own money.
yeah.
You know, from
It's
like he does skip hire and demolitions and like waste management. He's based just down the road from me here,
well,
Rob Collard,
we
and
drive past there. Well, in my own work, when we go to do to work in certain areas, we drive past one of his yards all the time. You
yeah,
know,
down in Hampshire. Yeah.
yeah. So
Um,
these people aren't
but
millionaires unless you're.
no, unless you've made it yourself, like people like Rob Collard. I'm not sure if he's a millionaire, but he's
Well,
done
yeah.
very well out of his business ventures, and he's worked very hard. And so has Andy Neat. And this is going to open up a can of worms. But
Open it, please.
Andy Neat is a self-made millionaire, done it all himself. And people say, "Oh, he's only in there because he brings money."
Yes.
Every driver, bar three or four, are there because they bring money. Without drivers bringing money in, these teams aren't on the grid.
No.
And that's why we've seen the likes of Andrew Jordan and Dan Camish departing the series because they either don't have the budget or they don't want to spend the budget on that. They'd rather do it on their own business ventures and look after their families.
Yeah. You look at Andrew Jordan. He seems. I've not spoke to Andrew. I'd love to speak to him. I'd like to
Yeah,
find out
ditto.
about
Yeah,
all of that. But he seems, through his social media presence, happier working on his gorgeous historics than
yeah,
he did in his last sort of year, 2 years maybe of British Touring Cars.
yeah,
Now he will be back because he's been doing the testing on the hybrid. That's
yes,
something I'm excited about. I'm excited to see how that car. It's a shame it's going to be starting off from the grid, so from the pits. So,
yeah,
but I mean, for one, I want to see has he still got it on a touring car grid. I want to see
mm,
what they'll allow him to actually do in terms of rubbing his racing, let's say, and I
yes,
want to see how it fares. No disrespect to anyone at the back of the grid, but he's a championship winning driver.
yeah.
He will be overtaken. He will be making surges. But what I want to see is how far up the order he'll get.
Yeah. I mean, how far can he take that? Take that car and that technology. Just saying about Andrew Jordan again. I was at the British Grand Prix weekend, and he raced. Now this has gone under the radar.
No, he did.
There was the GT Masters were there, and he was racing. I'm sure someone can tell me what car it was. I've completely
Was
forgotten.
it a Shelby? Shelby Daytona.
No,
Or was it?
crikey, was it?
Was it?
I can't remember. I
Oh.
think you might be right. I'm not sure, but I didn't even know he was there until they said, "Oh, it's so and so first and Andrew Jordan second." I was like, "Hey, what? Hey, what? Who?
AJ?
What? Pardon? That really?
Is
That
that
can't be
right?
him, surely." And I just watched the race, and then obviously he came second, got on the podium. I was like, "Oh yeah, there he is." But yeah, I mean, he's obviously a very, very good driver. And the BTCC, it I think it needs. Well, it doesn't need him, but it'd be a better place with Andy Jordan in it because he's very, very
We
good.
need the best quality drivers we can
Yeah,
get.
and see, this is another thing. People it kind of annoys me, and they say, "Oh, well, the best driver should be on the grid." Well, but that's motorsports never work that
They
way.
should be, but it can't always
Well,
be that way.
yeah, but we should all be able to buy a Ferrari, but we can't.
Well,
Y-
exactly.
it's a car. Why can't I buy it? But because it costs, and it's the exact same thing. People say about it's like money talks these days. Well, you don't need to say these days. Money's always talked. F1 was based on rich kids going racing, rich boys going racing. And if you've got money, you can go racing, and if you don't, you can't. It's as simple as that. That's how it goes. Um, because motorsport is a business, and no one goes into business out of the goodness of their own heart. Everyone goes into business to make money and to be profitable. And if there's someone comes in waving a checkbook to help that out, it doesn't matter what business it is. Then he who has got the biggest checkbook is going to hold more sway, even if there's better drivers out there. Um, because without those guys, the teams wouldn't be on the grid, and there wouldn't be and there wouldn't be a
I think,
championship.
as JP said, he's quite, I don't know, famous for saying this, but the best driver, the best racing driver that could ever be, could be stuck in Shells and Tesco right now. You don't know
Yeah,
because he never
yeah.
had the budget to get going.
Right. Of all the people that I've spoken to, I mean, I was down at Thruxton for a track day recently, and they were saying about um, uh, you know drivers who have got the best car control they've ever seen, and they could have easily done Formula One. And all the people that I've spoken to, there's two names that crop up all the time. One's Jason Plato. They said he's that good. Yeah, if he really wanted to, he could really, if he probably a bit more disciplined, maybe I don't know. But if he could have gone way, way, way up the ladder. And the other one is Tiffany Dell, who's driven everything in the world. I've sat in the passenger seat with Tiffany Dell going around Thruxton, and that bloke, he doesn't even look where he's going. And he's doing 150 miles an hour sideways, and and he's asking you about your favourite sandwich and stuff like that. Tiff, look at the road. He's like, I don't know what I'm
I
doing. It's
got it, don't
fine.
worry.
Yeah, it's easy. But for one reason or another, they haven't had the budget, or the timing hasn't been right, or whatever, and they've not gone as far as they would have liked to. But yeah, without money you can't go racing. But yeah. So getting back to the hybrid thing, I mean, I'm the same as you. I would like to see where it can go, and I think the biggest thing that I'd like to see from the hybrid thing and the hybrid era is, I hate to say it, people just embrace it. Hybrid technology is already with us on the road. We see the Teslas and all these
Yeah.
cars knocking around on the road, and it's the
The
future, and it
cars
has to
are
be.
going to still sound the same. They're still going to
Well,
smell
yeah,
the same. They're going to look the same.
they did a test, at Snetterton. I think it was pre-COVID or during COVID. There was a
Yeah,
test at
they
Snetterton,
did.
and they went out. Was it the Corolla? Was it a
It's still
Corolla?
the
I think.
Corolla. It's the same thing as Speedworks are running.
Yeah, and everyone just said. I spoke to one of the current mini challenge drivers, and he was at Snetterton at the time, and he just said it just sounds like a touring car.
Yeah, it's going
I
to.
think people hear the word hybrid and automatically think, oh, electric,
It's not electric. If
and it's not. It's not at all. And I just think if we keep going with what we've been doing for the last 70 years or so with racing cars and road cars, then pretty soon there aren't going to be any cars on the road because we'll have used everything that is needed to create the fuel to make them go. So I think there's got to be, I mean, it's the future and it has to be. And I think it'd just be nice if people just said, okay, let's just not knock it before it's even gone out on track. Because I guarantee when it comes out on
Oh,
track,
people love it. It'll be no different.
the first 3 or 6 races will be like, oh, it doesn't quite sound the same as, but by rounds, by like round 3 or 4, it will be the norm.
It's
So
if anyone's got any concern, then if they go on YouTube, if they look up the this year's Goodwood Festival of Speed, Andrew Jordan
yeah,
did the hill climb in it. In
yes,
that car that's going to be racing at Silverstone. That was my concerns about, noise put to bed. It sounds the same. It looks the
yeah,
same. It will smell the same. It will be the same. All they just
yeah,
won't. They just won't be chucking ballast in it. They'll be tuning them down. Not like the turbo tuning fiasco they
yeah,
had. They'll, that will be ballast instead.
yeah.
Folks, it'll be
Um,
fine. And I can't quite honestly say for sure if one day touring cars will go all electric. Personally, I hope they don't because, as I have said, I don't actually. It's not a case of I prefer the sounds of internal combustion engines. I just don't like that whine. That whine sort of, it's like nails on a
yeah.
chalkboard to me.
I mean, people have often said, "Why don't we cover much of the Formula E on the hard compound?" And obviously, we've got to keep it very neutral and very middle of the road with things. But we've got our favourites and things like that. Of course, we're only human, but we don't cover Formula E because um, it feels a bit gimmicky with all the technology and the electrical stuff, and they can turn down the wattage, and then you can do your what was it, activate your attack mode and stuff, and there's the Twitter fan boost. To me, that's not racing.
it doesn't.
That's all fabric, and it's all good ideas. And if you love it, then if you like your Formula E, then good luck to you. If that's your bag, great. But we don't tend to cover it because of
But you're a fan
you know
page, and
people that say that it's a fantastic racing series. Um, to me, Formula E is like the IndyCar was at Nashville the other week. Not a great race, quite entertaining, but when it comes to racing, it wasn't that. It's not particularly good. And as you say, that whine when a car goes past me, I want to go, oh,
yeah,
not what?
yeah. Did I? Oh, that almost hit me.
Yeah. Sorry, was that something flying? Oh, sorry, was that a wasp?
Yeah.
And again, it's a generational thing. There'll be sort of people, possibly listening to this who are sort of 14, 15, 16, who only remember Formula E being here and other electric series. And we're probably sounding like dinosaurs here, but and there's we say things are iconic and retro and stuff. I hear the word retro. I said, oh yes, retro. This is a 2003 F1 car. That's not retro.
Retro at all.
I'd finished university by then. Come on, surely not. Um, but I think the hybrid technology has got to be the future. I don't think, certainly not in the next, say, 25 years. I don't think motorsport's going to go all electric. I don't think the BTCC will. I think there is still a place for the combustion engine,
Well, Jason Plato said it on Ross Kemp's podcast. He said he thinks
but we just have to trim it.
there'll always be room for there'll room for both to run side by side. There won't
Yeah,
be we've got to decide. He thinks
yeah, and there's no need to decide. Um,
because
you know,
motorsport really, I mean, yes, it's petrol, yes, it's emissions, yes, it's a finite resource and everything like that. But the concern is not motorsport. The concern is road cars and the sheer amount of them.
because that's where the damage is going to be done, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's the biggest the issue with motorsport, really, in my opinion, is the travel. You look at the F1 calendar and the teams, not just drivers, but the equipment that they're jet setting around the world.
Yep.
That's
And they're either
more,
driving through Europe or flying, as you say. Yeah.
it's more detrimental to the environment than the cars going around track.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of perspective. I
Yes.
think people like to they catastrophize it, however you want to put it. They worry, they take to their social media with some rage, but I
Yeah.
don't think there's a call for concern. Hybrid era does not mean we're going electric in 5 years. It probably means we're not going to be going electric sooner. If anything, it's probably
Yeah.
going to be working to elongate the, working with.
That like transitional phase, isn't it?
Yeah,
Almost.
I mean, like I say, this could just be the mainstay now. This could be it. We don't know,
Yeah.
but for now,
I mean, just think of where we're now, 2021. I mean, again, I'm going to age myself. Like, I'm like 20 years ago, I was 20, and they were talking about, and if you think about the advances in even in British touring cars, in an F1 and in like World Rally cars, even going back to Colin McRae's day in the World Rally in 1995, 96, if Subaru brought out a car that looked like the Impreza now, all the 15-year-olds would be like, what the hell's that? That looks rubbish. But to us, it's like, what a car. Wow, that is the rally car. And that's just in like 20 years. We've moved on from things that looked a bit blocky and a bit. I mean, I was sat behind a Ford Focus from 2005 today, and it looked old.
I remember when they're
15
new.
years ago. That's 15 years ago, and I still think of the Focus as being new because Ford Escort and all that. But things move on and things change and things very quickly become the norm. Every single road car that we've got now looks space age compared to like 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
just people. It
And we
is
just
just time
thought,
rolling on.
crikey, and we just thought, I'm never going to own a car that looks like that. And now every car looks like it. And it's the same with the technology. In 20 years, things like, not like full electric, but hybrid cars will be 90% of those on the road, 95% of those on the road. It's just the way that times change. And I think that racing has to get on board with it. I think Formula E is too far to the extreme.
It's an experiment, if you
But
ask me.
yeah, and I see was it like Mercedes have pulled out now today. They've pulled out for next year, so
What's
teams are walking away from it because they've got their fingers in all the oil companies as well, haven't they? But
we haven't got time
so
for
you
that
can't be promoting it
conspiracy.
too much.
No.
But I think the BTCC is the same. We've got this hybrid technology. It is here. It's been here for a while on road cars, and as you say, with the Goodwood footage and with a few drivers that I've spoken to who were at Snetterton when that car went round, they just said we didn't even realise until after the first lap that it was the hybrid car because it just looked like a touring car going round and it sounded like one. So that's good news because we do like the noise.
Well, it is a huge appeal. For if you watch on TV, it's the noise. And if you ask me, if you go trackside, it's the smell.
Yeah,
Oh.
when that first car goes past and you get that. I mean, I've always said there is no better smell in the world than that of a two-stroke engine.
No.
If they could sort of bottle that and have it as an
Do you
aftershave.
want, do you want to just become a tree surgeon with me? You'll stink of it. You'll stink of that and tree.
Oh yeah, chainsaws.
Yeah. Oh, I get that smell every day.
I sounded way too excited about chainsaws there, didn't I? That doesn't put me in a good light.
It's an engine. No, it's an engine. It shows who
It's an
you are.
engine.
It's
Yeah.
an engine. And it goes. Brum, 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 brum.
I was thinking, there was a point, unbelievably, where I went about 4 years without going to a track, and I went to Brands.
Call
It
yourself
was
a
about.
motorsport fan.
Oh no, it's terrible. Yeah, terrible. But no, I just had other stuff going on in life and all that kind of thing. But and I went to Brands Hatch, and it was one of the Carrera Cup guys. I think it was Dino Zamparelli. Weird. I've got that stuck in my head. And he came thumping down through clearways because it was GP circuit. He came thumping down through clearways just as I was walking in to Brands from the car park, and it went past, and it had that low guttural kind of
Mm.
growl, almost like the Subaru had, the Subaru Levorg. It just sounded different. And then I just got that waft of exhaust, and and without even meaning to, me and my mate we just turned to each other and just went, "Oh,"
Oh.
and that's what it does. So hopefully, yeah, we can maintain a bit of that. But obviously, the hybrid's got to be the way forward.
The thing is, BTCC, we love it, and I'm not gonna knock it down or anything like that. But it's if you're in that area, if that's where you want to be, because it's so niche. Once you're in and you're doing strides there, it's not dead end, but
Mm.
it. Do you know what I mean? Once it sort of
It's
suits
difficult
you.
to do anything
Well,
else.
we've seen drivers leave. Obviously, super touring era drivers don't count because that was a different ball game. They've moved on. They're still doing things.
Just touching on that, we were talking. When I did speak to Dick Bennett, and I spoke to Matt Neal on the live interview, and oh, sorry, no, it was no, excuse me, it was John Clennon. John Clennon was because he was obviously in the super, he was pre-super touring and then into super touring, and he was saying it was ridiculous the money that was flying around.
Yeah.
They were being paid not far off F1 wages at the time. Though the money was unreal. So that, I mean, obviously it is BTCC and it's seen as the best era of the BTCC, but to me it feels like BTCC on acid or on steroids or something. It wasn't BTCC as we know it.
No.
It was something else. It was something beyond, almost like Aussie supercars type
But
thing.
it outgrew itself. That was the thing.
Yeah,
It wasn't sustainable, and that's why.
no, exactly.
I mean, obviously, we know that the touring cars took such a huge. It took a hit when the super touring era ended. The series just it nosedived. I hate to say.
It took a plummet,
And
yeah.
what
And
we're
well done
doing
to
now.
Alan Gow for doing what he's done.
Well, that's
Well
the
done to
thing.
Alan. Yeah.
He's rebuilt it to
Yeah.
to where it is now, and if whether he's doing this on purpose or if it's hit a natural level, but it's gone back up to where it to a good entertaining high level, and it's
Yeah.
not trying to exceed itself anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's not trying to punch above its own weight type thing.
Yeah.
I think but just going back to the drivers who have done it and left and come back. I mean, we looked at Flash.
Yeah.
He left and through no fault of his own, he lost the drive because Audi was it Audi?
I think it's
Or,
Audi. Yeah.
they pulled out of the World Touring Cars. But I'm sure Gordon won't mind me saying he didn't have the season he expected out there, travelling around there. Because it's not quite as blood and thunder as the BTCC. It's a bit more precision, and it's a different style of racing, and it didn't suit him. Same with Colin Turkington. He went out and tried it, and it didn't work out. But then you look at someone like Tom Chilton, who did very well in World Touring Cars, and guys like was it Andy Prio did very well in World Touring Cars. But in BTCC, they've never really been a consistent front runner. And that's not a slight on their abilities. It's not a slight on the World Touring Cars or on the BTCC. It's just a different style of driving.
Stylings, but again, it goes budget. It can go personal life. It can go so many factors as to why they end up in a series. Maybe that's not where they would be best, but it's where they are.
And that to me is why two of the most underrated drivers in world motorsport ever are Gabriele Tarquini and Ivan Muller. I mean, they're both still racing in the World Touring Cars. They're both still winning races. They're both in their 50s. I think Tarquini's nearly 60. But they've done it in DTM. They've done it in World Touring Cars. They've done it in the BTCC. And if Gabriele Tarquini had had a decent F1 car in the late 80s and it wasn't a Coloni or an AGS or whatever else it was, if he wasn't driving a lawnmower, he would have, he was that good. He was very, very good driver. He'd have been right up there. So anyone who's managed to bridge the World Touring Cars and the BTCC has done very, very well. And as you say, there's lots of very, very good drivers out there in the BTCC who may not be able to do it elsewhere just because of the nature of the BTCC, and it suits them. It's such a unique series. I think Ash Sutton has said that he'd like to go out to Australia and do the.
Well, he's still young. Like they're saying, like Paul O'Neill.
If I was him, if I was him, I'd say right, race this year, win the title, maybe give it 2 more years, try and get 5.
Yep.
And say, right, done, and get out to Australia and go and race those Holdens and those Mustangs because they are monsters.
So despite and I'm really sorry, Ash, his hairline, he's actually younger than me.
Is he sort of like mid-20s, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm late 20s.
I think, is he mid or is he late or is he? I can't remember.
I think he's mid. I think he's 24, 25. But that's no age, He could
exactly. I mean, you can spend 3
and still be racing.
I mean, you can spend 3 more years in the BTCC or 4 and not even be 30.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I've always said about Ash Sutton, there's one form of racing that he would absolutely smash, and this is going to be a bit of a weird one: NASCAR.
No, I see it.
Because it's quick, it's fast, it's precision, but you can get your elbows out, and I think he'd absolutely nail it if he did a bit of NASCAR. Maybe not the first season, obviously, because NASCAR's mental. But
you hearing this, Ash? You hear it? Yeah.
Ash. Yes.
Ash.
Come on. This is just your career path. Just listen to me, Ashy.
Guidance. This is what it's meant to be. You're meant to have stumbled across me today to listen to me and Rich just chat motorsport nonsense.
Destiny.
You've just skipped ahead to this precise moment. You're doing NASCAR.
Yeah, that's it. Here we go. Yeah. 6 years from now, it'll be up there driving for Team Penske alongside Joey Logano or someone. But yeah,
put a 5 on it.
Just on that, I remember saying about transferring abilities and stuff. There's that famous one. Pardon my language coming up here. It isn't going to be too bad. It's a little bit. Jason Plato. He's a big fan of the late like Dale Earnhardt, the NASCAR legend, and he's also the reason why Danny Ricciardo has got a number 3 on his car. Dale Earnhardt. There you go. That's my little tidbit of the day.
We're an education podcast.
Yeah, there you go. It's a school day. But Jason Plato, because he drove the ASCAR around Rockingham and he did that series for a bit. And he said he always wanted to get into NASCAR. And he went out there to the Daytona 500 and he managed to get into the paddock. And like Dale Earnhardt was there. And he said, "Oh, my name's Jason. I've raced in this. I'm currently in the British Touring Car Championship. I've done the World Touring Car. I've done this and I've done that and blah, 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 blah. And I'd love to give NASCAR a go one day." And apparently Dale Earnhardt just looked at him and sort of half smiled, because Dale Earnhardt was like the proper All-American,
Hell
Six
yeah.
foot three, big handlebar moustache, shades, cowboy hat. Ah, yeah, son. That kind of guy. And he just looked at Jason Plato and half smiled and just said, "Son, this is where the big dogs piss." As if to say, "Do you reckon you've got the nuts for this?"
Get out.
And basically, Jason Plato just thought, "Oh,
Do you know what? Matt Neal's fine. He's a lovely chap.
well, I'd like to try." You know what? I think I'll stick to the Chevrolet Cruze.
Yeah, yeah.
But no,
So still
um,
American.
but I'm yes, yeah, true. But I'm sure Jason would love to give it a go. But it was just that thing, like NASCAR drivers know. People think, oh, it's just going around in
Oh,
circles,
Christ, no, it's not. No.
and
It
which
scares the
is
hell out of
like
me just watching it.
and but it also it's the ballad of Ricky Bobby, isn't it? Talladega Nights, and say, oh well, rubbing is racing, and that's the thing that translates into any contact in motorsport being okay, which is not the case. But they're allowed to get like bump drafts and stuff in, and lean on each other a bit and things because they're not slinging it into 90-degree corners. They're just leaning gradually on each other and positioning themselves, and it's just bonkers. You're at 30-degree banking doing 190 miles an hour with someone 3 inches off your bumper. It's just absolutely bonkers.
Put it that way, and you can't justify doing it, can you?
It that and I think it's the Las Vegas Speedway, the IndyCar one where we mentioned about Dan Weldon and he lost his life and everything
Mm.
10 years ago. And J.R. Hildebrand said, recently, he said to me, he said it's just being some of the circuits that NASCAR visits and the Las Vegas Speedway because of the banking and the speed and the closeness of the racing. He said the Las Vegas Speedway was the circuit where he thought, this is stupid. What am I doing? What is going on? This is, because they said it was too easy to go fast because of the nature of the circuit. It was too fast for the bank they had on it, and it was just absolutely bonkers. And NASCAR, they do it. Obviously, they do the short ovals, but the longer ovals like Daytona and like Talladega and all these other ones. I think Bristol's a short course, but they just say that NASCAR drivers, we keep saying that motorbike racers are built differently to anyone else, especially the TT guys who graze their head on a brick wall and on the flint walls and stuff.
Yes.
In America, NASCAR drivers are seen as, you idiot! What are you doing?
You've got screw loose.
What what part of your brain doesn't work because you want to get rid of it? There's something you're not wired right. um, and But yeah, not saying that Ash Sutton isn't wired right. I'm not saying that, but
We just gone
I
full
just
circle just to insulting the man now.
it was a long way round to have a pop at Ash. No, no, it's not at all.
Let's just
I
say it's
just
just
think that Ash is gutsy. He's gutsy, and he'll go for things, and he's learning his craft with it. And I just think he'd be very well suited to that kind of thing. I think, no disrespect to anyone else, I think he's one of the very few drivers, maybe the only one, who could go and race in Australian supercars or in NASCAR or in World Touring cars
Well, he
and
carries himself well enough
be
to
very
deal with those
competitive.
people as well, because, like you say, like that, you quote there towards JP, you've got
Yeah,
to take that level of comment, from the off, and just kind of
yeah,
go, all right, you just
yeah,
sit
all right.
here, old timer, you just sit on your little stool, watch me do it. And I feel
Yeah,
that Ash, he's just got when he interviews and stuff, he's never high or low, you know.
yeah.
He just holds, and
He's
it's a
he's
mindset.
he's very level, and
Yeah.
he's not afraid to have a little dig.
No,
Is it? Which is fine,
that's just what it is.
And I think Andrew Jordan's the same. He isn't afraid to
I put him in
have a
that
little hint
category. Yeah, he's
of someone
headstrong.
saying, "Oh, I'm going to keep an eye on you, mate. Don't worry." That
you
kind of.
just you just look after yourself, sir. I'm always going to support your page as long as it runs, because
Appreciate
it's a good page, and obviously anyone who's going to listen to this is more than likely already listened to your live interviews or read your page more. So,
Well,
you're already
maybe.
advertising to your own crowd here. But I hope people hear this and they sort of get more of a perspective, and it helps to keep you going. Um, I think we're probably going to wrap us up here because this is by far, even the Jack Butel interview, this is surpassed. And
Yeah, sorry.
no, honestly, if I think we could have talked for a lot longer. I
Yeah.
really do. And you know, now without Cam, our thing was that we didn't need to have people on. We just liked to. And although the two of us ran our time short a bit, I'm now a bit more dependent on guests. I would love to have you more on more. To talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be up for that. If it's talking about motorsport, I'm well up for it.
And yeah, this has been great. It's been great to be back, and I think really it's you've been a good person to get us going again. So
Well, thank you.
it's
And no, and obviously, thank you very much for having me on.
no no.
It's nice to be on the other side rather than asking the questions.
Oh, I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah,
I have, yeah, yeah, it's been great. And I
excellent.
hope I've not talked too much rubbish, and I hope I haven't sounded too much like a dinosaur from the
No,
80s.
I think this is. I think we've covered things that needed to be covered.
Good stuff.
Okay, well, this has been Around the Country in 30 Races, a Seabrook Day production. I've been Will Waring, and he's been Rich Hoyt. And we'll talk to you next time.
Take care, guys.